Are all of our stories about wizards, superheroes, and space battles just childish entertainment? Or is it possible that there's a reason that these heroic stories of good versus evil are so attractive? Is it possible that what some call fantasy is actually a glimpse into reality? Epic stories that pull back the curtain and help us understand how God's world really is. The project of Reforming Nerddom is to answer these questions by exploring different elements of nerd culture, whether it's comics or video games or movies or books. And yes, we're Christians, so we're doing it from an unapologetically Christian perspective. We want to help Christians engage the world rightly by discovering what is true, good, and beautiful in these stories of courage, sacrifice, and redemption. This doesn't mean that there isn't plenty of ugliness and wickedness in nerddom that needs to be thrown onto the burn pile, but together we want to explore our favorite tales from Star Wars to Lord of the Rings and honor Christ by seeing how they reflect the true story, the greatest story ever told.
A master called together a few young men of this generation and spoke to them, saying, I gave your great-grandfathers a time of despair and poverty and global war. They were strong and victorious and built an empire greater than any other. But they were terrible fathers and raised entitled sons and daughters of rot who inherited everything through no courage of their own. To those rotten sons, your own grandfathers, I gave abundance and wealth and stability. But they pissed it all away on debauchery and sexual revolution, establishing many idols and slaughtering tens of millions of children in sacrifice to their appetites. One generation fought against the perpetrators of a great Holocaust. The next dishonored that victory with an even greater Holocaust of their own children. The children who did survive, your fathers, carried on the sexual descent of their parents into new madness and new disease, piercing and inking their skin like death-worshipping pagans as they did, establishing special days of pride to celebrate the debauch, slaughtering more children and castrating and poisoning others, claiming to be creators when they were destroyers, mutilating the young and calling it acceptance. All these generations I have judged, and am judging. Their madness now is only a taste of my wrath. The young men were afraid and asked the master why he had called them and why he was telling them these things. Because it is now your turn. I am giving all of this chaos to you, he said. Your inheritance is a world of crumbling false gods crowded with blind and mad worshippers. I am entrusting you with a world of empires built on cracked and heaving foundations. The time of your inheritance is near. You have only a little while to prepare yourselves. Seize this moment of chaos and build me a world of sanity and righteousness. When I return, I will judge what you have built for me. With so much rubble to work with, I expect great things. The master turned to leave, but the young men begged him to wait. How can we do this, they asked. There are hundreds of millions of unbelievers in our nation alone and only a few of us. Their master answered, saying, I am not a hard master. You will have the truth and wisdom if you desire it. And you may each choose one woman to help you. That should be enough. Go now and build New St. Andrews College. Carpe Chaos.
Hey y'all, welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Pastor Toby Chuck Knox, the water boy, and it's good to have
Anti-Semitism is bad. It's bad.
It's bad.
Real bad.
Pastor Wilson in the studio with
Don't
us.
be anti-Semite.
And what's funny is Knox had me
I think we can just wrap it up there.
I just did the show for us.
If
It's
you're
over.
single, get married.
That's it. Don't raise them to be anti-Semites.
Knox, I was talking with Knox earlier today. He's like, I haven't been following any of this.
I just know anti-Semitism is bad.
Yeah.
I think if I got that part, racism is bad.
But what about Hitler?
Yeah, no, not a good guy.
Bad guy also?
Yeah,
Okay.
he wouldn't have liked me.
No sympathy there.
I figured that out.
Oh my goodness. Well, you were going to say something else?
That's good. Yeah. We're just going to talk about the Antioch Declaration.
Antioch.
Do what?
What?
Oh no.
Antioch Declaration.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Is your website user-friendly, fast, and cohesive? Does your brand clearly communicate who you are and what you have to offer? Whether you're just getting your business started or you've been around the block, Mad Bear Creative can help with all your design needs, from brand identity and web design to SEO and marketing materials. As a husband and wife team, Julio and Roslyn are excited to partner with other small but mighty business owners to capture attention, drive engagement, and unlock growth for your business. Visit Mad Bear to sign up for a free consultation. It's madbear.io, madbear.io, to sign up for a free consultation and discover how Mad Bear can help you build your legacy.
That's my brother-in-law and sister-in-law.
I thought
and he's
so.
been trying to get his legal immigration from Mexico for, 2 years now?
Well, that's stupid.
Well,
And, it's unbelievable.
He should just come over through everybody
and
else.
he'd probably get like $400,000 and all that. So he's been trying to do it legally for 2 years, and Trump's going to come into office. It's probably going to happen like in 10 days after Trump's in office.
that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Did it sound like I was talking in a tin can for a second?
Yeah.
Did you kind of?
I heard nothing.
You didn't? Okay.
Knox
All right.
fixed it.
We're really grateful to have Pastor Douglas James Wilson. Well, they got the full name out. It's like
Dr. Grauke. We had Dr. Grauke's funeral today, and apparently Dr. Grauke would call you Douglas. That was his.
Douglas.
That's so funny. Yeah.
But this is Douglas James Wilson. It's
Okay.
like your mom used to call you. Probably.
When I was in trouble.
Yeah. Douglas James!
And I'm here with a tie, so you have to listen to what I have to say.
Yeah, and a sweater vest.
I noticed you dressed like me
And
today.
a sweater vest.
I didn't even.
That's funny.
It says here that he is a conservative, reformed, and evangelical theologian and pastor at Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho, faculty member at New St. Andrews College and board member, and author and speaker. Who knew?
This is the
You're
first
all
time I think
those?
we've ever read a bio for Pastor Wilson.
I think it is.
Yeah.
It's because
Doug's like, I'm that?
It's because you're in trouble. Wilson is known for his writing on classical Christian education. He founded the ACCS and Logos School. He's also known for Reformed theology. Well, how about that? As well as
Is this AI? Is this AI?
It's really great. He's also known for his general cultural commentary. How about that? Look at that.
General.
General.
Vague in general.
Anyways, as always, thank you very much for
Yeah, it's good to be here.
being here
Why
with
do
us.
you keep coming back?
I don't know.
Thank you. I just
don't-
want
I
to
just
say
don't
thank
know.
you.
So there's
You know this is your fault.
I beseech the Lord 3 times.
He has not taken this thorn out your side.
His grace is sufficient, even for cross politic. So there's been some things again, and there's always things. But recently, in particular, there's been a couple of things. I don't know. They're kind of related, but not the same thing.
Right.
So initially, there was sort of this I don't know what we want to call it, but sort of this explosion thing related to our friend Joel Webbin and a member of his congregation and a pastor in Germany named Tobias.
Who I'm also friends with. So I'm on Joel Webbin's board, and I'm friends with Tobias.
And I think we've had Tobias on the show before.
Yes.
Way back in the day, like in the aftermath of COVID, I think,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
right? Anyways, so there was a thing there, a collision and sort of a thing. And then just a few days ago, the Antioch Declaration was published, which happens to include among some of the authors a few of the same people that have been involved in that conversation, though the Antioch Declaration is not speaking directly to that pastoral snarl. Could you help just frame those issues for us as we mostly want to talk about the declaration, but I think helping kind of distinguish those things.
Just a couple of minutes on the pastoral collision, which is what it was. The member of Pastor Joel's church used to be a member of Pastor Tobias's church
in Germany.
Yeah. And what happened was Pastor Tobias was concerned about the direction that this parishioner's thoughts had taken, particularly on things relating to the Jews and World War II and so forth.
Yeah.
And they had a meeting, Pastor Joel and Pastor Tobias and a couple of this parishioner's friends and another elder of Pastor Tobias had a Zoom call meeting to discuss it. And I'm not going to get into that whole tangle has not yet played out. So I'm not going to get into the details of that. I'm going to let Pastor Joel and Pastor Tobias handle that. But I'm just going to address the structure of what happened.
Okay.
The structure of what happened is they had this meeting, and that meeting was conducted on Zoom, and it was recorded without Pastor Tobias's knowledge.
Okay.
And so then Pastor Joel did a podcast with someone talking about what happens when one of your members shares a Holocaust meme, and he said a number of things about Pastor Tobias. I don't think he mentioned his name, but who we were talking about. So that was said, and then Pastor Tobias did a podcast answering that. Right. So it was a skirmish between pastors over a pastoral situation and how this parishioner was doing.
Right.
Pastor Joel was trying to bring him along out of anti-Semitism, and Pastor Tobias was concerned that it wasn't dealing with the root issues, and it was that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what happened was the meeting was recorded. Pastor Tobias did a podcast that was hosted by Eschatology Matters.
Right.
And then and that was a controversial thing. It blew up. And then a couple days later, Pastor Joel let Eschatology Matters let them know that he had recorded the initial meeting that Pastor Tobias was talking about in his podcast.
Yeah.
And said that there are discrepancies here. Gave the initial secret recording to Eschatology Matters. They listened to it, took down Pastor Tobias's podcast because of it. Mm-hmm. But Pastor Joel did not allow Pastor Tobias to hear the recording. He banned, Pastor Tobias was willing to own any misstatements or corrections he needed to make, but he needed to listen to the recording, which I think was a few months old, in order to
own it,
in order to own it or not own it correctly. Yeah. And then the controversy erupted. The video, the secret recording was shared with others, Anons and other people who started to pummel Pastor Tobias over what he had said, and Pastor Tobias didn't have the recording or the means to answer that.
Would you like some Belvini?
Please.
It's really good. Yeah.
I'm going to need some.
So what it boils down to is the whole controversy got off to a very messy start. Right. And the issue is not the issue is not that Pastor Tobias, if the meeting hadn't been recorded, he could get away with slandering somebody.
Right.
The issue is it really copacetic to record someone and then to share that with others and have a public controversy where the person you recorded is the one person who's not allowed to listen to it.
Yeah.
And in order to own what he needs to own, or correct what he needs to correct, or explain what he needs to explain. So that's why the whole thing got off to a messy start.
It sounded like it was a messier start even before then.
Well,
right?
it's been coming to a boil.
Okay.
But that was sort of the kickoff of this whole thing.
Well, and it going public.
That's what I mean. I think when it went public,
it went public. Yeah. So and that hasn't yet played out because I believe Pastor Tobias still needs to answer the accusations, and he's going to. So that would just leave it there on the details. Yeah. But that's the structure of the thing. As I've seen online chatter dumping on Pastor Tobias as though he's the cause of this conflict ongoing, it's plenty of mess to go around. Pastor Tobias was doing a pastoral thing, and it's the setup is. Did Pastor Joel talk differently, knowing that he was being recorded, and Pastor Tobias not knowing he's being recorded? Does that make a difference in this? And yes, should the person accused have access to the evidence against him?
Right. Do you have a question, Chocolate Knox?
Why should I care?
Because it blew up. And the pieces are falling out of the sky all around you.
Yes, I noticed that. I got an umbrella so that I wouldn't have to get hit by any of the pieces.
So he's still
I'm joking, but I'm kind of, because part of it.
That's the thing is like, so, I mean, apparently, I mean, there's people, I mean, many people in my feed keep piling on.
Right.
And I would say the vast
Are
majority.
they real people?
But, well, yeah, some of them.
Okay. Because anybody who doesn't have a picture, I don't trust.
Yeah, no. I mean, some of these are friends of mine, or people that have been in the studio.
You need new friends.
Well, no, they're your friends too.
I haven't been in your thread.
You know,
Go ahead.
but no, some of them are decent people and good guys, and some of them are anons, and some of them are are unhinged. But a lot of people are sort of piling in, and saying, where are the apologies?
Right.
Where are the apologies? Where are the apologies?
Oh, we have a mob now.
And and that was that's been one of the big.
But I wouldn't say some of those people are a mob either. They're just.
Right, but I guess, and so let's distinguish.
Yeah.
There's a mob,
Yeah.
but I think there are good guys, reasonable guys.
On both sides.
Who are, oh no! Oh no!
That's
Sorry.
funny. That's funny.
But thanks, Knox.
Yeah.
but
I'll shut up now.
But my point is that I think there's a pressure though being applied to have an opinion.
Okay. Yes.
And for the most part, what I'm seeing is the pressure is primarily on. We have been told. I mean, I know at least one of the particular things that was the accusation coming against Pastor Tobias is that he said I never asked for church discipline. I never asked for church discipline. Something along those lines.
And then a recording comes
and
out
apparently
saying-
the recording says that he did.
Yeah.
Where's the apology? Where's the apology for lying, slandering, so on? And this was a hit job on Pastor Joel.
Right.
And since you've been semi-involved, James White's been somewhat semi-involved, maybe others, Jeff Durbin, I don't know who else has been involved, Joe Boot. It's like then this statement comes out, Antioch Declaration, and a whole bunch of people are saying, look, there might be something reasonable about that declaration, but I'm not listening until I get an apology.
Right.
Oh.
So I would say.
So that's why you should care.
Got it.
So
Okay.
I would say this: the people online who are demanding an apology for a tangled mess that they are thousands of miles away from.
Right.
And if I were counseling these people in my office on a weekly basis, I could see disentangling it and then saying after a couple of months, I think you need to apologize for
here.
this.
Yeah, uh-huh.
This is a gnarly thing. So for just
We want it now.
we want it now. We want to fix everything like we get it at a convenience store.
Yes.
We we want our coffee hot and we want it now. But this is the thing. Pastor Tobias in his podcast said we weren't pressing for church discipline. We weren't driving for church discipline.
Yeah.
And in the secret recording, it sure sounds like he's
Asking
for church discipline.
Yeah.
But Pastor Tobias's position is I was not asking for church discipline for sharing a meme.
Okay.
Oh, okay. In other words, the charge this parishioner shared a Holocaust meme, and
You're saying I'm not saying you discipline somebody over a meme.
and the charge basically the charge is you wanted to discipline this man and his wife over a Holocaust meme. Pastor Tobias would say I was not wanting to discipline him for a meme. Discipline is on the table for the whole
Right. Just for how he's doing.
the whole pattern of Jew hate, and yes, discipline could be at the end of the road, right?
Yeah.
And so I have no problem with church discipline being brought up in situations like this. I believe that some of our CREC churches will have to conduct church discipline over issues like this. So the issue is not church discipline. The issue is the apparent discrepancy between him looking like he was calling for church discipline and then denying he was calling for church discipline. But he has an explanation of that the people who are demanding an apology have not yet heard.
Right.
And part of the reason they have not yet heard it is because of all the tangles that resulted from not having the access to the
Video
recording
or
and all of this.
Right.
So, cool your baby jets.
Right.
Wait till you hear from Pastor Tobias.
Right.
I've got a draft of a statement I'm going to make about my role in the whole thing, which I'm waiting until after Pastor Tobias answers.
Right. And that's just due process.
It's due process.
I mean, if for all the intensity for crying out for justice and this goes like in a lot of different directions, but like, we don't want the fake social justice of the left. And we want real biblical justice. We want a lot of this is erupting in the Christian nationalist, orbits. Like we want a Christian nation. We want a nation that's got Christian biblical justice. It's like, here's a great practice round for us right now.
Right.
And we're failing.
This shows that we're ready to govern.
Well, and I'm just
that's what I mean.
So funny.
That's what I mean. It's like what this shows us is we are not ready for prime time at all. And
we want lynch mob
can't even
justice.
do. How is it? I'm going to stay.
We haven't heard the other side.
Right.
We don't need to.
But we know who's guilty.
Are we getting to the point where it seems like counseling sessions amongst pastors and churches are now being handled in the public sphere for everybody else to judge on? That I just wonder why. I don't need to know. I don't feel like I need to know any of this. I feel like this should be something that still should be handled between the pastors and the parishioner, and it shouldn't even be anywhere public for anybody to be talking about.
Yes, if it was a matter of, if let's say one person said to your wife is ugly or something, and there's a skirmish, that should absolutely be handled in counseling in the office.
There's gonna be some public,
and maybe a couple punches.
I was going to say there's going to be a public sign of I didn't like what you said.
But this is the grist for the mill. The issue that this is revolving around is a hot button issue. A number of red-pilled young men, particularly, are listening to Stone Choir, and they're buying into the whole thing. Some of them are saying, oh, there's some good points there. Yeah. Some of them are saying, I just like being a little bit transgressive and messing with my boomer grandparents' hair.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think a swastika tattoo would do it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, probably would. And then other people are doing what I call the Revoice for Nazis thing, where they say, yeah, these young men are hurting. They need someone to come alongside them and encourage them and strengthen them and lead them into a better path, which is what Pastor Joel says he's doing with this parishioner. And he says he's made progress. And then there are people who are saying, look, this is a gangrenous thing. This is the kind of thing that is going to really be toxic in the body. Yeah. And then once this pastoral thing blew up, it was like lancing a boil. Yeah. Because all this other stuff came out in virtually every comment thread.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are people who say, golly, look at that. And then there are other people who say, what are you talking about?
Right.
I don't see anything.
Right.
So if you have, someone could tweet a cartoon with someone of my persuasion, maybe it's me, licking an Israeli boot while being peed on the head, the whoever the Jew is peeing on your head.
Right.
Now, is that conducive to sensible discourse?
Right.
Don't you see a problem here? That's the thing that we're targeting.
Right.
So
Did that happen?
Yeah.
Huh.
So,
oh boy.
So I'm not saying I'm not interested at all in having someone. I'm not sure about Churchill. I think Churchill was not as great a guy as everybody talks like. Yeah. I'm not going to call him a Nazi. I'm not interested in calling anybody a Nazi.
Right. Yeah.
I'm only calling people Nazis who call themselves Nazis.
That seems reasonable.
So if they call themselves Nazis, which is what Corey Mahler does, is what Stone Choir does, if they call themselves Nazis and they're persuading certain people, and they have persuaded some, can I call the self-identified Nazis without committing a hate crime against the person who happens to agree with them about Churchill on one or two things?
Right.
Yeah, they're distinct issues, of course.
Somehow you're getting lumped into both of those.
Oh, yeah,
He's a boomer and a Nazi.
We're not going to make it. We ain't going to make it.
So it's in this context then that this statement, this declaration is published, and it is, again, there's an overlapping concern, but it's not the same thing at all. No. Even though some people are trying to conflate them. I mean,
they're not conflated. They're not the same issue.
There are people in my comments that said, if I don't agree with this, if I don't sign this, am I getting excommunicated too?
Yeah. No.
And of course,
I had that.
Who's getting excommunicated? I'm so lost.
But that's well. This goes back to the
conversation.
It's the conversation. So they're conflating those things, and they're saying, and so Pastor Tobias was one of the guys that was one of the collaborators
Yeah.
who's involved in writing this.
Okay.
And so they see his name and they say, oh, so he's coming after all of us now, or whatever,
Right.
is the accusation. And if I don't sign on to this, if I don't agree with it all, then I'm getting church discipline too. And this is a tool for that. And the answer is no.
Right.
No, this is not that at all.
I hadn't signed it yet. So am I going to get communion Sunday? I didn't know. Probably need to read it first.
And I think and also maybe when six pastors get together and say, hey, this is a declaration of things that we think are important.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
Correct.
It's six pastors getting together and saying, we think these are important things. This is not the Nicene Creed.
No.
This is not a Westminster Confession of Faith. This is thought was put into it, care was put into it. It wasn't just drafted overnight.
Right.
But that's the other accusation is like, oh, look at, they think they've drafted the next Nicene Creed. Mm-hmm. And no, this is, six pastors who think these are important things. Please consider this.
Right.
And if you agree generally with what we're saying, feel free to sign on with us and encourage the conversation.
I mean, this is like the social justice thing that John MacArthur put out a couple years ago. And what was funny about that was like all these people signed it, and regarding this declaration, a bunch of people responded and said, I disagree with certain things here, which every declaration I would disagree with.
Sure.
And same thing with the social justice thing. It's just been kind of funny watching like the difference between John MacArthur, social justice.
Wait, that's Josh Bice's. Thank you.
Is it Josh Bice's?
Thank you. Get it right.
I mean, John's the Pope over there, though.
Yeah.
So
watch it.
Versus this declaration, and the same
Right.
people who signed that are,
Right.
I guarantee had disagreements with.
Every consensus statement.
Yeah.
The Westminster Confession of Faith is a consensus document.
Right.
And so, for example, someone's going to say, "Oh, if I like Aristotle," there's a little thing right at the end about Aristotle. Oh, I can't sign it because I like Aristotle.
Right.
I would say, look, sign it because I agree with the formal cause of this statement, but I disagree with the material cause.
I see what you did there. So I want to just kind of walk through some of the sections, not every section. And sometimes, so one of the other things is, people are acting like, or a few people have asked me, is this sort of is this an attack on Pastor Joel? Is this attack on, I don't know, Stephen Wolf or Andrew Isker? And I've been saying over and over again, no, not at all. No, and in fact,
why would they even assume that? I guess because of the dialogue.
Because of the controversy.
It's the context is shaped
Joel.
around that.
That's right.
And
I
so,
got it.
And so, I honestly, I read this and I thought, oh, this is. I didn't have any part in the composition. I got access to it right around the same time everybody else did.
Yeah.
And read it and said, oh, great, boilerplate, orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Which is why when I signed it, and then after I signed it, I didn't actually do that. I typed my name. I sent it to Brian Sauvé, and I sent it to Joel, and I said, I know you've probably already seen this, or you're going to see it shortly, but I think it'd be great if you guys could sign on to this. Mm-hmm. And I read it, and I had no. I didn't think this was an attack on them.
Right.
I wasn't thinking that at all, and that wasn't me being in any way disingenuous, somehow like in a backhanded way, like I know you can't sign this, but wish you could. Mm-hmm. No, I honestly, literally wanted to. I thought it would be great. It would be really great. We may have shades of difference of emphasis or whatever, but I really think this is generally boilerplate Christianity that within which, like, guardrails. We could talk about a lot of things, like have we gotten World War II exactly right? Are there things that we need to talk about? How do we talk about love of family and nation? And
that's what the statement on social justice in the gospel was trying to do for Christians.
So anyway, but this is not an attack, though it's talking about things, but it's trying to set up some guardrails, correct?
Set up guardrails and clear lines so that we can figure out where everybody is.
Right.
Okay. Right. Because there are people who are bad actors and they're acting badly.
Right.
And this is not assuming that anybody in particular is a bad actor, this is a statement of what we believe to be true and important.
Right.
And in addition to what you just said, the way this came together is, I'm guessing I did an initial draft of it, but the initial draft, or the first 2 drafts I did, are probably a half or a little over half of the final.
Okay.
And so I didn't do all the stuff, but I did the initial thing to be worked on.
And true to form, the Baptists get a hold of it and they expand on it and make it longer.
Well, I think
one fight at a time, Gabe. One fight at a time.
If you're single, get married. Get stuck on one thing. So I know for a fact, as the initial drafter of this, that there are a number of paragraphs here. As we've been, we published Stephen Wolf's book at Canon Press.
Right.
I wrote a book on defending Christian nationalism. I'm part of the whole Christian nationalism movement, and we've had discussions and leaning this way and leaning that way and debates and that sort of thing. I know for a fact they're taking the radical guys, or the more radical guys, who are attacking us for this. There are a number of things that I embedded in here that I knew they would like.
Yeah.
Right. So I knew that they would agree with it.
Right.
I knew that this was an area where we had commonality.
Right. Common ground.
But the reaction has been word salad. This is terrible. This is about
unclear, ambiguous.
And instead of what ought to have happened, if everybody was being calm, is they'd say, if someone would say, "I'm sorry, I can't sign this because I like Aristotle, and I had a problem with the 3rd paragraph from the bottom,
right?
But there's a lot of stuff in here that's really good,
right?
Okay,
sure,
no controversy,
right?
Discussion, there's discussion, no controversy. But if everybody says, every man to his tent, O Israel, then that tells you that there was something simmering under the surface the whole time. Right. And this is, in many respects, an unnecessary fight, which illustrates, ironically, 100%. That it's a necessary fight. Because
the issue's not really the issue.
The issue's not the issue.
So
issue.
We're wrangling. The ground is over, again, maybe ordered loves, and how does a nation interact with the gospel, and these are the things that are the ground, the material. Right. But you're saying, and in that sense, there's no need for us to fight.
Right. And those things should be discussed.
Yeah.
Canon Press has a project in process, a 5 views book in process on Christ and the nations. Yeah. And we need to discuss, we need to debate, we need to hammer it out.
With good faith people.
All of that is good.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you say something and all of a sudden you've got this eruption, which we currently have, I start looking around for what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
And why have I heard the word boomer more in the last 2 years?
With more vitriol.
Yes. Wait. So this is a big issue. The generational issue is a big player in this, and this is being dismissed as a BoomerCon document.
Yeah.
And we're the young, restless, and radical. We're the ones. It's time to take Grandpa's keys. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're gonna do it better this time.
Right.
Well, that's as may be. Sometimes young people, like David says, I know more than all my teachers. I know more than the ancients because I love your law. So there are times and places where the young buck does know better than his teachers.
Right.
There are also times when Rehoboam's young advisors lose him the kingdom.
Right.
Right, because he wouldn't listen to the older advisors.
Right.
So it's not the antithesis is never between older generation, younger generation. Yeah. It's between wise and foolish.
Right.
Who's being wise and who's being foolish.
And that cuts through all the generations.
Yeah, you've got foolish old men, you've got wise old men. Yeah. You've got foolish young men, you've got wise young men.
Right.
And that's where the antithesis ought to lie.
Yeah.
And so if I know for a fact that if I could check which paragraphs to excerpt from this, and if we put someone else's name on it,
right.
and then circulate, hey guys, I'm thinking of saying this.
Right.
I know that a bunch of guys who are attacking us would say, "Oh, that's good," or "That's good," and that's good. I know
you put John MacArthur's name on it, and they're going to sign it.
He was thinking like Stephen Wolfe.
I know things. I know that there are things here that Stephen Wolfe would agree with.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that there are things here that Andrew Isker would agree with.
Right.
I know for a fact.
Right.
And the fact that it went tribal so rapidly indicates that there's another organizing principle that's motivating the tribalism.
So I said, that's interesting. What is that? What do you think that is? Because it sounds like, here's something that I've noticed while you come up with your answer. You don't need any help, but you haven't had a chance to drink that good whiskey.
That's good. That's Belvini 12 year.
But I've noticed that when the whole woke culture started, when I got here, 2014, you guys had already started working through what you saw coming back in 96, right? Through the history conferences. And then all of a sudden it blows up and hits the country hardcore in 2012, really, 2014 from then on out. And it looks like we're at a place where everything that's going to happen nationally seems to be happening in one way or another in our little culture of Christendom over here. And then it goes nuclear everywhere else in the world. So what is the thing that's the center point of the real conversation that we're not having?
Yeah, I would point to the recent NSA ad, the Carpe Chaos ad, which talks about it really is a generational thing. The men who won World War II were heroic, valiant, courageous, but the ad says, but they were terrible fathers. And they raised an entitled generation, which was my generation. They raised the flower child generation, the boomer generation. The next generation made it worse, right? Your fathers. And now you young men, you've got a mess of a world to address. There are a number of people who are involved in this battle, and I catch flack online for saying this, but I'll say it again. This is a crisis of fatherlessness. Okay, and the issue is not, you had good fathers and you're trying to fill up an ache of your fatherlessness. No, the fatherlessness is objective and real. It was a real problem, and the boomers really did rip off the subsequent generations. Right. That really happened. But the idiocy of this is every generation is you don't have a full generation of orcs. You in the World War II generation, you had men who saw the problems coming and they fought it. And then there were men who were running the show who let it happen. The boomers, there were boomers who were fighting what the boomers were doing. Every step of the way. And if it's myself that says it, we were in that number. We were in that number.
You are a boomer. You're part of that category.
You have a Joshua and Caleb. In these generations that are unfaithful. You can say it's an unfaithful generation.
And there's Joshua
and Caleb.
And then if a subsequent generation is angry with the 10 spies who turned back, who went into the land, and because they're angry with the 10 spies, they vent their fury on Joshua and Caleb.
Because they're the only ones still around.
Then I would say, okay, the problem is, I agree. Those 10 let you down. That's why you had to spend 40 years in the wilderness. They let you down, objectively let you down. But you are attacking the wrong people. You're attacking your friends. And so when people say, well, boomer con, just another boomer, here in Moscow, we have approaching 1,000 young people who are being educated in the classical Christian education. Hundreds at NSA, hundreds at Logos School, Classical Conversations, Jubilee, Logos Online. We have approaching 1,000 young people who are being educated for the future, and none of them are boomers. None of them. And so when you look at Moscow and look what's coming out of this community, we are engaged in a project where we did not rip off our children. And we did not rip off our grandchildren. And you guys are hurting out there because you were ripped off.
You really were.
You really were. But don't, for pity's sake, don't attack the people who were doing the opposite.
But do you think that part of it is that, at least when I've seen this other places culturally, is like, yes, you didn't rip us off and you guys have been faithful, but you still are holding us back from the things we might really want to do because you think we might go too far because we don't think y'all went far enough.
And so that's what dads do.
Good dads. That's
You know,
what good
it's
dads
funny
do.
you say that. It's funny you say that. I was thinking about this earlier. I grew up in a time where you saw men who knew that there was boys that didn't have fathers who would interject as a father, and that was still allowed.
Right.
Hey, boy, pick up your pants. Don't walk around here like nobody loves you. Turn your head around. Get a shirt that fits. Come here. Let me take you shopping. What's wrong with you? Stop talking like that. Treat that woman with respect. Hold the door open. And that was allowed.
Yes.
It was that was okay.
100%.
Like no one thought it was discouraging because they told us how to act right.
Right.
But and we didn't always like it. We always like, all right, this old guy telling me what to do. Yes, sir. Like it was still something was still there that held together the respect, even with the angst that we had towards that person.
And so the come alongside, let's help these guys. They're hurting. Come alongside. Let's encourage them and speak. Yeah, but they don't need moms. They need dads.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
oh.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm gonna drink some of this because that hurt.
I want to just add in there, Knox, I think too that part of what's but you mentioned the social justice thing going on.
Yeah.
And I do think there is something of that going on. Is we've had this turn, and I think woke 1.0 is going out, is fading away. There's been a massive term, the Trump election, and all his appointments.
Right.
It's like, we talked about this on the show a few days ago, but Mike Johnson's flip the other day, is Representative so-and-so a man or a woman? Well, I don't want to talk about that controversy. And 2 hours later walks out to a press.
I got to talk about that controversy.
I just want to make it clear: a man is a man, a woman is a woman, and I think he did that because he got an earful.
It's Twitter.
Because and that's the like we've had this a little bit of a course correction. That so that woke 1.0 is, I think, gone.
The pressure is coming from a completely different direction now.
Right. Yeah. But what I don't think people maybe are aware of or watching out for as much is the fact that, so now you got books out that are pointing out that maybe, what's the book called? That white is the new hated class. What's
Unprotected Class.
Jeremy
Carl.
Jeremy Carl. But and which a lot of good, helpful stuff in it.
Really good book.
Yeah, I thought so.
And so, but now it's like there's an option here. There's a possibility, which I think some people are latching onto of a new victim class. Mm-hmm. And so, you had a dad, and sure, all these people in Moscow, Idaho, the privileged classes with your classical Christian education and all the dads that cared.
Privileged?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Not only that, but it's white privilege.
Dang it. Well, that's okay. I stole me some white privilege. Look at that.
But you got a bunch of people that haven't had that, are not living in a strong Christian community, don't have a bunch of men around them, elders who are saying, hey, boy, pull up your pants.
Yeah, that used to be a term of love.
Yeah, but my point is, and so it's easy, I think, to resent that.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have this resentment, and you say, look, I got fired because I'm white. I didn't get the promotion because I'm not a woman. Yeah. There's all these, all the intersectional people that got ahead of me,
and they're really getting screwed.
And they really are getting screwed. And I think and they really are.
Yeah.
I'm not underplaying that at all. But the question is now, what are you going to do with it?
We're going to hang Joseph and Caleb, Joshua and Caleb in effigy.
Yeah. but that's the instinct. So the instinct is this sort of Girardian thing that we're going to punch somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
And we need to blame somebody. And there's this weird thing that where we tend to blame, we take it out on the absolute wrong person, the wrong people. And it's often the people we see having the things that we wish we had. There's this mimetic rivalry thing.
Right.
And anyways, I think that's the other piece of it. Is this there's a kind of, I think there's at least a temptation to resentment, bitterness, envy. That's
and competition.
Yeah, there's that rivalry. Yeah.
What do you? So let's say that I'm somebody who read the statement. I don't even have a context for this, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, all right, this is cool, but man, it doesn't have as much depth as I wanted to have. I wish it was more specific on some things. But it's cool. I just don't feel like I need to sign it.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, but what is it? But what is the purpose of this? Even though, let's say somebody says it's not as articulate as I would like. The goal of it is to do what, though?
Okay, so why Have you seen any of those Nazi marches that are made up of FBI agents in their creased khakis?
Yeah. Hot off the shelves.
I like how that makes Pastor Wilson laugh.
So, how can I tell an FBI man with a mask on, well, they're all in uniform and they've got this swastika and they're marching and, okay. Now, why would the FBI do something like that? Why would they do that?
Because it's bait.
Efficient.
It's
Because
bait.
they're wanting to make conservative Christian influence look bad.
Right.
Okay? If we tar conservative activism with that, it makes them look bad. It makes them, our line is going to be, they're extreme, they're extremists, they might blow something up, they're domestic terrorists, and so we're going to do the swastika thing, we're going to do the Hitler thing. Now, my question is, those FBI men who are doing that are being paid to do that because it serves their purpose. Mm-hmm. Why do we have people on our side who are doing the same thing for free? Mm-hmm. Right. What are you doing?
Right.
What are you doing? Right. Are you trying to? You're exulting.
All right, I'll sign it. All right.
Yeah, you better. so let's say, are you trying to get Pete Hegseth canceled? Is that what you're trying to do? Because what happens is Trump gets elected.
Yep.
He appoints Hegseth or nominates him for defense. Yeah. And let's say now Pam Bondi for Attorney General. Yep. And I see the guys who are attacking us over this online. Yep. We are so back. We are so back. Right. We are so back. But your behavior, or not your behavior, but the behavior that you're coddling, the behavior that you're bringing online is the kind of behavior that is going to cost those people their cabinet appointments. Uh-huh. You really want Hegseth, hooray, we're so back, and Hitler forever, be brought up at the confirmation hearings? Right. Is that what you're trying to do? Right. Are you trying to give the Democrats raw material?
Right.
Now, and this is so bad, and really is bad, if I really were a Nazi, right, if I really wanted to advance the cause of Nazism, I would think that these guys are morons, right? Because this is not the play. This is not the game. Yeah. This is not the moment where you roll your cards and say, look at what I've got. Right. Now, and then you throw in the fact that the Nazism really is objectively God-hating and wicked. Yeah. And then you have people who are not God-haters, who are not wicked, but who instinctively move to protect the kind of folly that is going to hinder and retard and mess up what's actually happening. What the good stuff that's happening. Now, the good stuff that's happening in D.C. is not Reformation Revival. No. It's not the millennium. It's not none of that. It is a reprieve and a breather for Christians to dedicate ourselves for the next 2 to 4 years to do what has to be done. Right. And this controversy is demonstrating to the world that we say we're ready to step in and rule the West. Right. You couldn't rule a popsicle stand.
Obviously, yeah.
If the people who are closest to you, the first thing that happens when this victory opens up, the first thing that happens is this moronic controversy. Right. So I'm thinking back in the days, back in the 80s, there was a big battle between pro-lifers over whether we have a constitutional amendment to ban abortion nationally or whether we try to overturn Roe. Mm-hmm. Right, that was the big divide back in the 80s. And there was a conference. I think it was like a big meeting. I think it was at the White House. Reagan was the president, and all the pro-lifers got in the same room, and a controversy arose between them. Yeah, blam blam blam. Yeah. And Reagan got up and left. And at the door, he said, "When you guys figure it out, let me know."
Man.
Okay. Now.
Man.
Wow.
Okay. We are in the same spot. We're in the same spot again on this issue, on the life issue. Right. We basically rule. Assuming rule takes maturity, which requires judiciousness, which means that you learn to hold your fire. Yeah. You don't demand apologies for a situation that you know precisely 5% of.
Right.
Yeah.
You just don't do that.
Yeah, right.
And you especially don't do that if it's setting the conservative, reformed, evangelical world on fire. What are you doing?
Right. So I want to go back to something you said a minute ago and just underline it. It is inescapable in this world with the flaming libs that we're dealing with that we will be accused of being Hitlers and Nazis and racists,
correct,
and misogynists and homophobes.
Right.
And true that if you're not preaching if you're not getting those accusations, you're probably not preaching the Bible straight up the middle.
And especially if you're deathly afraid of getting those accusations.
Right.
Yes.
So that's all true. But we've got to add one more thing, provided that it's always false.
Right.
So it's necessary for you to be prepared for and ready for and totally cool with the false accusations that you're a Nazi, that you're a white supremacist, that you're a misogynist, that you're, all the things. Absolutely. Be prepared for those accusations if you're following Scripture all the way.
Yeah. I'm ready.
And you must also be absolutely sure that every one of those accusations are false.
Yeah.
And as the Apostle Paul would say, I'm out of my mind to talk like this.
Right.
But I think over the years, I've got a few arrows through my hat.
Right.
Facts.
Well, that's the thing. It's just really, really incredible is that in this moment, given all of that the accusation is being thrown at you, me, and others that somehow,
James White.
Yeah, James White. So that now that like we're somehow like we're coddling the left. We're afraid of the accusation of misogyny. We're afraid of the accusation of being Hitler. like, what are you talking about? Like, we haven't slowed down in the slightest. The thing we're only insisting on is that it actually be a false accusation.
I mean, Doug has a book on the post-war consensus of the Civil War.
Yeah. Which war are you talking about? Exactly. We need to go back to Gettysburg. So the thing that's important in all of this is to remember that we are called to be Christians in the first in the first instance. Yeah. And when people accuse us of things, we have to really not care about the accusation at all, because that's the steering wheel that the left has used on the
100%.
right. And so the thing that's true about Netter, no enemies to the right.
Yeah.
The thing that's true about it is that we should never apologize for anything simply because the left demands it.
Right.
Yes.
If the left demands that we apologize for something or crawl, we must not.
And that principle holds true actually for anybody.
Right.
We don't apologize simply because somebody demands it.
Yeah.
Correct. But if I say, and this is an important distinction, I think, if you have a columnist, for a newspaper columnist or an author who can only write this book if he's not writing that book, I could see someone saying, the commies, the leftists, they're the big danger. I'm going to devote my career to tackling that problem.
Right.
And I'm not going to tackle the problem of the fascists and the alt-right. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
As far as my practical work is concerned,
right.
I have no enemies to the right.
I'm against those things, but I don't have time for it.
I'm going to devote myself to this.
Right.
But a pastor is in a different position.
Right.
If a pastor announces that he has no enemies to the right, he's just telling the devil from which direction to send the wolves.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Right. If I say I've just announced to the world, the right flank on this
completely unprotected.
Completely unprotected.
Right.
And if you attack me from that direction, devil, I will not fight, because if
You're on the right.
You're on the right.
Yep.
See, Pat,
that's not holding up in this particular statement at all, though, is it? There seems to be a lot of enemies on the right, according to them.
Well, here's the other thing.
That's the thing. The accusation is we went left.
Yeah.
We went left.
That's what the accusation is.
Right.
That's hilarious.
We've capitulated to the left and that sort of thing. No, the leftists, the communists, the collectivists, the globalists, all those guys, they are the big danger. The subsidiary danger of the Hitlerites is that it strengthens the hands of the commies.
Right.
So I don't think there is no conceivable way that Hitlerite, neo-Nazi, fascist thing
Marxist
would ever take over the United States. That is not a danger.
Right.
What is a danger is how many millions of people voted for Kamala Harris.
Right.
How many millions of people?
Way too many.
Even though she got shellacked,
right?
It was lots and lots of people voted for
65 million,
Kamala.
whatever.
Yeah.
So she's within striking distance.
Right.
Yeah. She's within striking distance. And her hand, or people just like her, or people just like her but smarter, people like that, this sort of nonsense on the right wing, I'm not afraid of the neo-Nazis. The neo-Nazis are not going to do jack.
Right.
The neo-Nazis are going to strengthen the hands of the commies. Right. And if we think that, the next election's in the bag, we're crazy. We're crazy.
Yeah. Right.
We're just absolutely crazy.
They literally called Hitler. They called Trump Hitler.
Right.
Like they were identified, and all they need is just 5 more pieces of data to demonstrate that those are his people.
And I had seen this election. I've seen the left adjust faster than I've ever seen them adjust at a loss. Just saying, whoa, how do we lose this when we thought we had it in the bag? They're adjusting really quick. So
I want to ask about at least 2 specific things in the statement. I know we're getting short on time, but the first is on the first page, and that has to do with this language and phrasing of post-war consensus.
Yes.
What paragraph?
This is about a little over halfway down. We deny we deny that neo-pagan secularism with its utopian religious motive arose as a consensus after World War II. Rather, it manifests itself as the political outworking of the so-called Enlightenment during the French Revolution, gradually won the hearts and minds of Western nations, being well expressed in the political philosophies dominating Europe prior to the outbreak of the 2 great global conflagrations. And then I want to read just the next paragraph. We affirmed that the aftermath of World War II served as a cultural tipping point for the secular narrative and its myth of religious neutrality, which has functioned as a centerpiece for these lies that has promoted this deception with triumphal hubris throughout all Western institutions, insisting on both an idolatrous religious pluralism and a mandatory globalist cosmopolitanism. So this is where we're addressing this post-war consensus idea. And I saw some people sort of, sarcastically posting things like, just say post-war consensus. And, it's like this, like that which must not be named according to the statement, this declaration or something like that. But this statement is not denying that there is, like Rusty Reno wrote the book, The Return of the Strong Gods, which is at least the book that I'm aware of that most clearly kind of lays out what has been meant by post-war consensus. And I, for one, was persuaded that he's talking, this is a real thing. A real thing. Now, but this statement is trying to situate that post-war consensus in a broader narrative. But why is that important?
It's important because we've had this disease for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? If a lot of our problems started with Rousseau.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis called Rousseau the father of the totalitarians, which I think is accurate.
Right.
If these things started in the French Revolution and with Rousseau and thinkers like that, the Enlightenment.
Right.
If that's where it happened, then it's not the boomers.
Right. Right.
Right.
It's
not the boomers.
They failed.
The boomers got played.
Yeah.
The boomers.
But it didn't start with them. They're not a uniquely malevolent people.
We didn't start the fire.
There's even a song about it. But I think that's really.
As a poet, one of your own said.
I think that's really important to underline, though, because I think what it was like. It did catch fire post-war. But those things that were swirling around, there was a bunch of fumes in the air, started by Rousseau, started by the French Revolution, a lot of secularism that said, and it was a reaction, of course, to the so-called religious wars post-Reformation.
It was after the Second World War that our Supreme Court came out of the closet and started to make decisions that radically began to secularize American public life.
Right.
So the currents were going on long before, but they made their move.
Right.
So after the Second World War, they made their move, and there really was a secular liberal post-war consensus.
Right.
But secularism is the beating heart of that consensus.
Right.
And you can't fault the people who have been at war with secularism.
Right.
This entire time.
Right.
But they knew them, so we can hang them.
Right.
That's about what it is.
I just want to underline that, though. It's like, the French Revolution and the Enlightenment project said what causes wars and violence is religion and nationalism.
Right.
Basically. So what is that? Well, that's what Rusty Reno points out is those are the strong gods. And that's the post-war consensus is this notion that what caused the world wars was too much emphasis on your religion and too much emphasis on your patriotism and on your family and on your people. That's what causes conflict and war. And what we need is this completely secular, multicultural, globalistic project.
What we need is bureaucrats.
Right.
More.
But which turns out only gives us more wars. The other one I wanted to just ask you about really quickly is the one about wolves. I don't remember where that is, but
second page, I think.
Is it
2/3 of the way down?
Okay. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, we deny that it's possible to be a faithful Christian shepherd without identifying, naming, and fighting the wolves which prey on the flock. As such, pastors have a duty to confront, rebuke wickedness in all its forms within their congregations. There have been some questions that say it's important. It says here it's important to name and fight the wolves, but this statement doesn't name any particular wolves. Who is this talking about? Again, I think maybe some people have said this is an attack on Joel. This is calling Joel a wolf, or this is that kind of thing, which it is not.
Right. That's wild speculation, right?
Yeah.
So this is a statement about the conflict. This is not a participation in the conflict.
Right.
So, right. We're saying it's fully appropriate for pastors to name wolves.
Right.
And the drafters of this document and I myself have named wolves when we're engaging in the fight.
Right.
And this
is a defense of fighting.
Right.
This is not me engaging a particular fight against a particular man.
Right.
So an example of a wolf would be Corey Mahler, excommunicated Lutheran at Stone Choir.
Okay.
Okay. He is a wolf. He's a bad man. Mm-hmm. He is spreading toxic poison in the body, and a lot of people who in Reformed.
But he's saying some good things.
Sure. Mussolini made the trains run on time. Right. So did Bill Clinton ever say good things?
Right.
Yeah.
Who signed the Defense of Marriage Act?
Right.
Right. So I think we need to stop being children, and it's sort of like
that hurt my feelings, Pastor. I don't feel encouraged.
So this is the thing: if you have a complicated country with hundreds of millions of people, and bad guys get in power, they're not going to do everything wrong. They're not orcs.
Yeah.
The good guys are not going to do everything right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can't. But the fact of the Jew hatred, the fact of the final solution, the Hitler's adoption of Darwin and applying it in radical ways, all of that is toxic and bad and evil and wicked. It's not the case. I've seen some of Hitler's drawings. He was a decent draftsman. Credit where credit is due. But that's like saying, other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that back to and the key thing is the hatred. Is the key thing is the spite. The key thing is this angst. Mm-hmm. And I think there's this angst, there's this spite, and there's this I think a lot of these guys that are drawn to this may not necessarily be drawn to the Jew hatred itself or Hitler himself, but they don't see what the big deal is.
Right.
And they say, it's just a funny meme. It's just kind of making light of it. But I think the point is the fact that you can find it funny, the fact that you think it's kind of just kind of an edgy joke. Yeah. It's sort of like being able to, watch a foul comedy and you say, well, I usually don't tell jokes like that, but it is pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's like, well, when you find it funny, that tells us something about you and your heart.
Yeah.
Your heart is a darker place than you think it is, even though you say, well, I don't tell dirty jokes like that. Right. But I will pay money to watch someone else tell me those dirty jokes and chuckle at them. It's a similar thing when it comes to I just don't think it's a big deal. Why are you making a big deal about Hitler and the Jews?
Yeah, and I would reply, if you can't smell that sulfur, you don't have the nose to be a pastor.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And now that doesn't mean if you can't smell that sulfur that you can't come and join our church and be served communion and be a member in good standing.
But our goal will be to help teach you that.
We have
teach you to smell it.
This is not an abstract problem.
Right.
We have had this problem in our congregations locally. For a scale of 1 to 10, we've been more at the 6 level. But and some of the other issues that have bubbled up in some of the other churches are more at a 9 and a 10 level. Yeah. But it's not an abstract thing for us.
Right.
It's
You're talking about our denomination, particularly here.
Our denomination, CREC, and also locally here, Christ Church, King's Cross.
Right.
We've had this problem.
Right.
And so consequently, if you want to pastor people, if you want to be engaged in the cure of souls, you have to deal with what's rotting out their souls.
Right.
And if you, for political reasons, want to say, or for tribal reasons, or for generational reasons, say, I don't see the problem with that.
Right.
Well, okay, go ahead. Continue to not see the problem with that.
Right.
But I don't think you should be an elder. I don't think you should be a pastor.
The mission of Armored Republic is to honor Christ by equipping free men with tools of liberty necessary to preserve their God-given rights. In the Armored Republic, there's no king but Christ. We're free craftsmen. Body armor is a tool of liberty. We create tools of liberty. Free men must remain ever vigilant against tyranny wherever it appears. God has given us the tools of liberty needed to defend the rights he bestowed to us. Armored Republic is honored to offer you those tools. Visit them at ar500armor.com. That's the letters AR, the number 500, 500, armor.com.
Where can people sign the statement at, or at least read it and check it out?
The AntiochDeclaration.com.
AntiochDeclaration.com. Pastor Wilson, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you very much.
Very grateful for all the work you do. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.